Hello, you're looking at a Larson storm door that I removed from its mounting on the front door of this house. This door is at least 20 years old. The lowest hinge, the hinge pins broke. And so when the door was closing, it would bind up on this hinge because it wasn't in position. The door isn't worth a lot. However, with something minor like this, I thought I would try to repair this. Believe it or not, Amazon.com sells some kind of sorta universal hinge pin kit. But what I found is that the piece that I need to use, at least the one being sold, is about 2/16 of an inch thicker than this. These are the parts. Actually, when the unit is intact and the pin is intact, the object looks more like this. It's actually one piece, and it rests. There's two of them per hinge in this door, and they each rest at the top and the bottom of the hinge. They're inserted in there. It's better if I turn this hinge bar over. You can see how they're positioned. In this door, they're actually retained by a crimp made in the metal of the door, in the aluminum of the door, to hold it in position. You have to take the hinge out, the part of the hinge. Believe it or not, this is plastic. Anyway, I haven't really gone to Larson because I heard that they'd sell you the whole edge of the door here, the whole hinge panel edge, if in fact you could even get it. And I just decided to try and repair this best I can. It's one hinge out of four. There's only four on this door. And I'm not sure which hinge does the most work. It probably depends on how this thing hangs. I don't know if the bottom hinge would bear the weight of the door. They're all supposed to uniformly take that burden, but it might depend on installation and some other things. Well, anyway, in order to get this hinge out, obviously, and to take the door off, you have to release the screws that hold the door frame to the door opening. There's a number of screws involved. There's two there and two there. So it's 8 screws on the actual inbound side. And then what you see when you approach the door, the front mounting, there's another set of screws that run up this molding here, if you want to call it a molding. Anyway, once you have taken the glass and the screens out of the door, which makes the door less bulky to carry, it's obviously less in weight, and you're able to remove this part of it, you can bring it into a work area to look at this. To get to the hinge, you're going to have to turn the hinge panel so that you can see the inner workings of this, which I'm trying to show you here. Once you've done that, you can release the hinge itself by removing the hinge screws. There's 2 of them here, and I'm showing you the loose one here, which goes into position here. I actually marked the hinge so that I would know where it goes in the door and how it sets. Although that seems to be obvious, it's amazing how small details like that can screw up your work. Anyway, the object here is to ram home the part that I just showed you up into the hinge, and then you can place it in position. It's tough for me to do that without putting the camera on a tripod. I kind of gave up thinking I could get these parts. So what I did is I took a drill bit that is approximately the diameter of this here, and I don't know what size it is. You just have to go with the measurement by checking that across the diameter of the drill bit. And with sacrificing a small amount of the length of this pin, I drilled a hole straight down into the top of this cap because I want to repair this. And although I was probably more likely to use epoxy, I decided to use super glue to hold this together. Again, there's 4 hinges on this door, and as long as it's in position and doesn't get torqued badly, this shouldn't break again, based on how you would drill this thing and set this piece in here. I'm going to show you what I did so that you might think if you have to do this, you'd get the same result. Here's the piece here in the vise. I drilled into this cap and I placed this in here with super glue, and it's pretty well set up right now as far as strength is concerned, so it's not going to move, and it really restores it to its prior condition. I'm going to show this to you here. So this is actually what the piece looked like before it broke. Of course, now the main pin up here is probably about 1/8 of an inch shorter because it's set into this cap. But this is now going to work back in this door. And again, this is how it would fit in the hinge. It goes in like this. And I'm doing this with one hand here. I might have to file or grind a little bit of the super glue off the edge of that there. But that's how it looks inside the hinge. And that's how you're going to install this back in here. And that's actually how it works right there. Except I got this thing backwards. This goes back to what I was just telling you about marking the position of something. It actually goes like this. Well, let's try this again. First of all, the hinge goes in here. So I'm already showing you how it's easy to make a mistake on something like this. There. And there's how it would look installed when you get the other end in as well. How difficult will this be? I'm not sure. I think I'll follow up with a short video on that. That's how the pin would look inside the hinge. The only downside to this, in order to get these out, I had to pull back this crimp right here to release the hinge pins, and those broke because they're very, very narrow and probably fragile or stiff metal at this point. I think what I'll do is I'll put some other kind of adhesive in there to hold that in position, and I'm thinking of liquid nails. I would also have to put a piece of tape or a separator in here so that that doesn't make that rigid, because this would probably have some freedom to turn if necessary, although it really turns on the upper part here, and that's inside the hinge. Anyway, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm going to drill the other pin here. I somewhat used a center punch to try to be right dead center in this piece so that I'm not off to a side, and I'm going to make my cut in here as such. And that kind of gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. So I'm going to proceed with that at the moment. I have now drilled a hole. It's pretty shallow. It's only maybe about, at the most, couple of 1/16 of an inch into that cap, so that I can fit this piece in here like so. I also ground off the bottom of this with a file so that it has fresh plastic. You always want to do that when you're working with some type of adhesive. It gives it better holding power. Anyway, I'm going to proceed to try to fit this in here and make it as straight and plumb as possible so that it will work with this door again. Okay, I'm now applying the super glue into here. Sometimes contact's important and you want to make it as snug as possible so that you got a lot of object contact. Mine's a little bit shaky. You can even try to use some of the plastic debris that came off of the drilling to help make it supplement the holding power of this thing. Not much, but a little bit would make it a little bit more firm on there. And I'll show you what I can do here. This thing is already turning hard. I'll have to drop this camera so that I can keep working on this. Okay, this is now setting up. With super glue, pressure usually helps it to grab on very good. And I suppose you could use a heat gun very lightly to warm this up. It would probably make it set faster. But mine right now is doing pretty good. I have good feelings about this because, again, I drilled this hole and set this in there, and on one of the hinges, which sits at the bottom, it's not going to fall out. It can't actually come out. It's actually seated in there. Again, the only thing that could happen to it is if it snaps off like it did before. So this would be a very good repair for the bottom of the hinge. The upper hinge, it's reversed over, which means that the narrow part that I'm showing you right here would tend to be hanging down. But this is pretty decent glue. The hole is sufficient in depth to really get a good grab on this adhesive, this super glue. So I'm pretty confident about this repair. Just hoping that I can get it to hang in there on the hinge itself. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, here's how the hinges are. The hinge is mounted on these pins, much like that. And like I said, the upper one actually is going to face down in the door, and the lower one up. And that's really how this hinge works. So the next job is to put it back into the door. Okay, my pins have sufficiently hardened to be put back into the hinge and in the hinge into the door, the half hinge. And to do that, you're just going to basically force this down into position, which I can't do while I'm holding the camera, but I've got one side in there, okay, and that's what you're going to do with the other side so that the hinge can be put back into position on the door. Okay, the hinge is now in position in this channel, and I'm going to return the screws back to the mounting position here to hold the hinge in position. Okay, at the moment, this is how the repaired hinge looks in the door. Pretty much as it was. The only thing that I have at this point to do is determine if I want to fasten or replace the fastening type of setup that was in here to hold this. It isn't really loose, but again, that's the way it used to be right here and here. Using a piece of sheet metal that I actually have for such purposes at times, comes in kind of handy. I was able to fabricate these little retainers, which I will then use liquid nails to grip to the channel here so that this hinge will stay in position, but it will not be glued on the side facing the plastic. And that will be the end of the repair to this door. In order to restore the integrity of the mounting of this hinge, where the pins are crimped into position here, I manipulated a couple pieces of sheet metal that I have laying around and liquid nailed them to this position. Of course, don't get the glue on the hinge pin. And this is now setting up. I'll probably put a thin piece of tape on here so I can remount this door ASAP. Okay, this storm door is back in position, and no longer having a hinge problem. It has a squeak. That's because it's rubbing at the bottom, which was prior to this problem anyway. But that's the hinge down there, so it pretty much looks to be back to normal.